What is the right balance of working from home versus creating a team culture that values in-person connections, mentoring, and water cooler conversations that have its own benefits for an organization?
Dom?
Yeah, I think balance is a fascinating topic here. I think there's a whole argument around everyone should work from home. There's a whole argument of bringing people back to the office. I think what that question shows us, and Atlassian's position on this, is the adults should choose. If you hire fully formed adults, enable them to find the thing that actually works for them. We haven't got, I don't think we have a single person who works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and we've got a few people that work from home, but it's an 11,000 person workforce spread all over the world. Now, the important thing in that question is connection. There is the human side to work that we cannot forget, and often that means we come together. We have a thing called intentional togetherness, where we bring our people together wherever they are in the world to spend that time to build connection and belonging and a sense of achievement together.
And do they have to do that physically? They
have to do that physically, and it's 3 or 4 times a year. It's not a huge impediment, but we find the majority of the time, knowledge workers, and we are privileged to hire knowledge workers, can actually operate from anywhere. They are untethered from the office and have been for years.
Carolyn, how does it work in your business?
Yeah, well, I think what Dom said is just incredible. It's very similar. I think, though, that there is a human connection, and we find that a lot of people want to come back to the office because they actually enjoy it more. Often people say, look, it's convenient to work at home, but did I love that day working from home? Whereas often we're finding people who come into the office say, you know what, I actually had a great day at work today. Yeah. So it's building that culture and the sort of camaraderie that I think is super important.
Do all your workers work in the office, or do they work at home?
Well, it's very similar. We don't have anyone that works 9 till 5, you know, Monday to Friday.
But when they're at work, whatever times they are, where are they physically?
So sometimes at work, sometimes in the office, sometimes at home. And we also have a work from holiday policy. So sometimes when people are going on holidays, we say, if you want to work half days from holidays, we allow them 5 days a year to work wherever they are in the world.
Work from holiday?
Yeah.
Sounds relaxing. Yeah. What's the benefit of working from holiday?
Well, because for school holidays, you might say, hey, you know, my family wants to go, you know, we're going to go to Bali for 10 days, but I'm quite happy to work 9 till 12. And I'm happy to keep up, or they might do that 3 days a week just to keep on top of my workload. And that's 5 days of the year that they haven't had to take out of their leave policy. And it's been super successful for us.
Yeah. Sally, how is this looking in terms of industrial rights? Because the union movement's actually pushing for workers to be able to demand the right to work from home.
Well, I think it comes down to a bit what they were both saying. Number one, work from home. For those who can, we've got to remember heaps of jobs you can't, but for those who can, is here to stay. It absolutely is. And it really comes down to good negotiations, not one-way negotiations, negotiations that take into account the protections you need to have for workers as well, because we don't want a situation where it's some people that are expected to work from home, for example, women, and that it entrenches, you know, a whole lot of inequities that way too. Also, if you are the one that's working from home and you're not seen in the office, you're going to miss out as well. Some of the things that have been said about culture are true, but there's an assumption to say too that you can't build that online if you work really hard at it as well. I think it is very important to bring people together at times as well, but if you negotiate this, and unions are doing this all over the country in agreements, it's a two-way street, not just a one-way street.
But you're pushing for an appeal to the Fair Work Commission for some workers, right?
Where it's reasonable, so that would be the point. So
give me a scenario that you think there should be a right that currently doesn't exist.
Well, there's some workplaces where you'll have some of the workers working from home and an employer might say, no, I'm not going to let you do it. Well, I would say that's unreasonable. If the workplace already has been shown that it can work and an employer's just deciding to say no to you, you should be able to appeal that. That's what we're after.
OK. And Tony Burke, is that something you support? Does the government support workers having greater rights to demand working from home?
Yeah, one of the things in the first major bill that we brought in within those first 6 months, Secure Jobs, Better Pay, most of the attention went to multi-employer bargaining. But one of the things we put into that bill was to change it so that workers didn't just have a right to ask, it couldn't be unreasonably refused. And to start to get rights where that could be contested in that way. Now, as Sally said, there's lots of jobs where you'll never be able to work from home. I mean, my part of Sydney during the pandemic, during lockdowns, the virus kept spreading and people said, oh, people breaking the rules there. And it was, no, they have jobs you can't do from a laptop and they have to physically go to work. So there's lots of jobs where it won't be possible. But where it can work, look, there's one thing I think we learnt during those really tough couple of years was that a whole lot of things that we thought were impossible actually work for everybody. And that's really opened up a lot of conversations.
A lot of murmurs of agreement in the audience. Paul Fletcher, should it be a right that's further entrenched for workers?
Well, clearly what the pandemic triggered was that it made us all realise that, number one, there was the broadband connectivity. Number two, we all had the devices. Number three, there was the software. You know, we shouldn't forget that 20 years ago, it wasn't technically possible. No. So it's all changed very quickly. In fact, there was a book written in the late 90s called The Death of Distance, which predicted what in fact took until about 2020 to happen. So sometimes the rate of technological change can be so quick that we don't even notice how much things have changed. And it does take a little while, I think, for human behaviour and human choices to adapt. We've learned about the strengths of working from home, working remotely, but some of the downsides, I think for younger workers, I think it's quite challenging because one of the ways that you learn in the workplace is by observing others, by those informal interactions. And I certainly observed some younger workers, I think, really struggling during the pandemic where they were told to work from home, but they really hadn't been able to build up their networks within the company. So I think it works very well for some, not so well for others. And I think the principles that have been talked about in terms of choice are sensible ones. And let's bear in mind, most workers and most employers work it out without the help of a union because only 8% of private sector employees are members of a union.
OK, on that question of
Except
women...
we negotiate it for everyone, whether they are or whether they're not.
Whether they want to have you negotiate for them or not, yeah.
OK.
Well, no, everyone gets to vote on an agreement.
Yeah.
Like there's 360,000 extra Australians covered by agreements compared to what there were a couple of years ago. Like a lot of this is happening.
None of which changes the fact that there are plenty of people who can work it out without the help of unions. Look, unions have a role in society, but what you're determined to do is try and force unions into a bigger role through using legislation.
Well, that's not true. That's just ridiculous.
Completely
so
true.
ridiculous.
I declare it open.
Because it's not the union movement and the political arm of the union movement.
I'm interested in the point you made about what might happen for women. Now, I've spoken to women who are also concerned that this flexibility is just all about women doing more work.
Well, situations where there's an assumption, oh, the people who are going to want to work from home are those who are going to be responsible for childcare. And so, in a way, it's entrenching that it'll be women that will be doing that are more likely then to miss out in lots of other ways and not change those roles as well. So we've got to consider that when we make decisions around this and when we negotiate it, workers with employers, that there's some of the issues that get brought to the fore because, you know, things can advance society and make things better for everyone, or they can take us backwards.
So there is actually, in your view, a risk with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's a panacea. I'm not saying it is, and also not for everyone. I think the point actually being made about young workers is a valid one. Mentoring, the informal discussions that happen. But all of those things are also a mix, and a lot of the places where we've negotiated agreements, it's been hybrid, and that's allowed sort of the best of both worlds. I think people living in a lot of our big cities have to travel a long way to work, and with especially having to pay for petrol, there's a real benefit working from home.